Welcome back. Coverage continues from the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. We will go live to Buck sitting down with new Titans GM Mike Borgonzi as soon as we get the green light here, and we're good to go. Buck and Mike Borgonzi, live from Indianapolis.
Yeah, get out of my way for a second, Lucas. I got the Titans GM sitting down here. Don't you know this man is important? He got the #1 overall pick, for God's sakes. What's happening, Mike?
Busy week here. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a loaded question.
No, I know it. I mean, I know you're getting a lot of the same stuff thrown at you, and it's just a head swirling moment. Even though you've been doing this for as long as you have, obviously this is not new. But this role specifically, like, have you gotten a moment to just kind of take a step back, whether it's you and the family or just you, and just be like, this is finally the opportunity, because you waited a long time to get this kind of an opportunity.
I did, yeah, and I think I talked about it through the interview process. When I interviewed here and met with everybody, that I called my wife immediately after I left the building, and I've known Chad for a long time, and probably 16 years since I came in the league. But I just kind of knew, I felt that the people in the building, I met Amy and Burke and Chad and Dolfo and Vin, that this was kind of the right place for me. It kind of had a little bit of a feel of like when I was in Kansas City. Just the people that I worked with, I kind of got that feel on the interview, that this would be the place that I want to work with these type of people here, and then we could build something here, knowing that there's a lot of work to be done here. But it's a tremendous challenge, and we look forward to it.
For the audience, because Chad's not somebody who's very front-facing. Obviously, if you're around the team, you get to know him, and obviously you've known him for a great deal of time. But for the audience, and I know you spoke a little bit about this at the press conference, but what was kind of some of the moments that led both of you to kind of gain that mutual respect for the football intellect, and what can you kind of share with the audience about that dynamic that works so well with you and Chad?
So we met back in the road, I think, doing advanced scouting at games, and we just, established a relationship then, and we talk about players over the years, and we saw players similar, and we came from the same system too. We were using the Green Bay system in Kansas City, and when he was in Green Bay, so we spoke the same language when we were talking about these players. And then I just, over the years, I could just tell he was smart, he was detailed, and someone that I wanted to work with in some capacity. We've talked about it probably for the last 10 years, and this opportunity came up, and that was a big part of it.
Titans GM Mike Borgonzi hanging out here with us at the Indianapolis Scouting Combine, show fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So with all of that, we just talked to Brian about this. We'll air that interview on the show a little later, but 18 minutes is not a lot of time to get to know these kids. Obviously, you guys will have a plan going in. It's not just, all right, tell me a little bit about yourself. How do you and your staff on the front office side of things kind of maximize those opportunities? Or is that really about like the coaches and what they put together to show the kids?
Yeah, so when we sit down, we try to get the coaches now involved in the process now. If there's questions we might have on their background, whether it's personal or football character, we bring it up in that early part of the 18-minute interview. But if there's no issues, we hand it right over to the coaches. So this touch point here, we call them touch points, but this touch point here is we're trying to get a foundation of, their football intelligence. And you can kind of get a feel, and even if it's 15 minutes, when you're asking players questions about certain plays, you get a little bit of a feel. So then the other touch points is the 30-day visits, when we can bring them in and actually install a whole offense or defense and see how they retain it the next day. And then there's opportunities we can go to them for private workouts or just to visit them on campus or in their hometown. So we do get a little bit. This is like the first touch point in the process, but you will get a good feel of just more their football intellect when you're going through these interviews.
329 players, I believe, invited to Indianapolis this week. Quarterback is obviously popular to talk about. Fans are very interested in the quarterback discussion. You guys got to interact with Shedeur at Shrine, and had a sizable contingent at both of the All-Star games this offseason. Specific to Cam Ward, though, what are you most looking forward to? How do you go about those questions to determine a player like that football intellect that you're talking about?
Yeah, well, first of all, just kind of have a sit down and have a conversation with them. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to meet Cam yet. So that's the big part about this first initial part. But for a quarterback, it's a little different now. I've gone through the process of evaluating quarterbacks in my other job before, and that's a process. And so that's really when you want to get them in and give them the playbook the night before, see if they can retain it the next day, get them on the board. I mean, it's literally an entire day that we take these quarterbacks through. And then also, a chance to fly out to them, whether it's a private workout. So there's a lot. The quarterback position is a very thorough process they have to go through, and certainly we'll use all those touch points.
How big an asset is Brian specific to that? Because obviously that's where his background is.
Huge. I mean, he's obviously been around some really good quarterbacks, so we're obviously going to lean on him a lot during this evaluation period because he's seen what players look like that play at the highest level, and he's coached them. So I think that's a huge advantage for us.
As you look at all the different needs, and I know you just did your podium and sidebar stuff, so apologies for the redundancy, but the audience hasn't necessarily heard it from you here yet. The idea, the cost-benefit analysis of picking at number 1 overall or trading out, how do you kind of weigh that specific to this class? And I know you're still in the initial phases, but as you mentioned, we're at one of these touch points. There's not too many left before the draft takes place. How have those conversations kind of gone, and how, I mean, obviously you've gotten significant interest.
Yeah, and like I said, it's so early on in the process. To make a decision like that without hitting all these touch points would be crazy.
Right.
So you have to go through the whole process here. And so once we get through the process, if we feel like there's a player there that we're comfortable taking with at 1, we're going to take them. And if we feel like there's an opportunity for us to trade back to add more picks in the draft, we're going to do that as well. So I think that's why this next month and a half is going to be a big opportunity here for this franchise to make the best decision for it.
You know who your sweet neighbors are yet at Lucas Oil?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's only asked because we had a Coach Mack on. I don't know if you've gotten much time with Coach Dave.
Yeah.
We did some Titans
Coach,
radio.
Yeah.
But he was on the Rams staff when the Titans last traded the number 1 overall pick to the Rams, and they were neighbors. And he said, yeah, basically we just went down, knocked on the door, said, see who's around, just see how many conversations we can drum up. Yeah. Ultimately it worked out. So I was just kind of curious.
Yeah.
See if I wonder who assigns those things. I don't know if that's a league thing.
It's a league thing usually.
Okay.
But I haven't checked that out yet. I will though.
When you go through, I'm sure you will. When you go through all the different situations that you have, all the different players, and all the years that you spent in Kansas City, what was one of the more memorable interactions that you had with a player that maybe helped you kind of contextualize maybe your approach or adapt your approach, or has it been pretty consistent the whole way through? Like, is there any one that sticks out of players that you've worked with or interviewed throughout the course of that process that maybe made you think differently about how you go about things, or maybe added some additional context like I mentioned?
That's a great question. And I always think back to, it was actually my first draft in Kansas City. We drafted Eric Berry, the University of Tennessee. And you felt like this guy's a culture changer. You could feel it right away when you met him. And that moment that we met him and first interviewed him at the Combine, then brought him in at the 30 visit, I don't know, that's always stuck with me.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get that feeling when you meet with other prospects again here at the Combine, or you bring them in for a 30 visit, like, all right, we've seen the evaluation, we agree on the value of the player, but then when you actually meet them, you say that this guy could change his franchise. He's a culture mover. Eric Berry stands out to me.
At the onset in Kansas City, obviously it wasn't, the level of success that previously you guys and now they continue to have or are looking to sustain, not the desired result for them in the Super Bowl. But what were the moments that kind of tested you as a staff in Kansas City? Because it took some time to get, to your point, 16 years, a long time. It took a while to get to this, for lack of a better term, juggernaut that the Chiefs that you helped create and were a big part of, and everybody else involved with that staff. What were the moments that kind of tested that, though?
It was probably to get to that level where we were winning. I remember there was one year in 2014, I think it was 2014 or 15 actually. We started the season out 1-5, and we had some momentum the years before. We'd been to the playoffs in 13, and then all of a sudden we start the season out 1-5, and then you really see what the team is made of. And, you see what type of culture do we have here when adversity hits? And that point to me always stood out to me when we were 1-5 that season. And we didn't change one thing. Like, usually, and I always admire this about Andy. He was very consistent in his approach. And he said, guys, if we just keep working, it's going to happen. And we turned it around, won 11 straight games that year. And that moment right there, I think, was the foundational moment for the wins that set up. Really, I really do think that.
Alex Smith is such an interesting figure in all of that, such an important figure for you guys, the success that you were having prior to Pat, and then obviously how much he informed Pat's development and growth there. As a league, it just seems like we churn and burn through quarterbacks at such an unbelievable rate, and I wonder what your perspective on that is to how to mitigate it, essentially. And I know that's the case. The average career in the NFL is short regardless of the position, but at quarterback it seems in the last couple of years, maybe you think differently about that, but just from the external perspective.
Well, I think you have to have a plan for the quarterback when you bring him in. You have to support him. You have to have an environment of whether it's coaches or, supporting. You have to protect him at the offensive line. You have to have weapons for him on the perimeter. And I think that's one thing, I learned when we acquired Pat, that we had things set up for him, and there was a plan for him, that we wanted to sit him for a year just to learn how to be a pro, just protections and getting in and out of the huddle. And so I think you have to have a plan. That whole plan is, not only the stages of his development, but how are you going to surround him? What's the environment look like? Coaching staff, protection up front, and then the players that can make plays for him on the perimeter. So that all goes into the quarterback plan.
On a different subject, Travis Hunter is obviously a player who's being considered for a top draft choice. How interesting is that evaluation been throughout the course of this process? And if you had to maybe recommend one tape for Titans fans to go watch that kind of encompasses that full experience of what he can offer, is there one that stands out?
I mean, it's fascinating because we were in the meetings and we were thinking, has there been any player that in modern day football that has actually in college football that's played both ways, not just having a few plays on offense and they start at corner. He's actually lined up and played every snap, which is I've never seen it before. There was some games that stood out. The Colorado State comeback where he makes that catch in the corner in the end zone. He's like a human highlight reel, really. I mean, every game there's a play that he makes, and he has rare instincts, rare ball skills, and he's just phenomenal player.
Is this the first interview that you've done that hasn't included the word generational?
Yes.
Are you surprised I got as much buzz as it
did? I am, yeah. I am, yeah.
I'm certain Chad was too when it was put out there. But we tend to stick on things and gravitate towards them. We got a lot of time to talk about you guys, Mike. I really appreciate you sitting down.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Looking forward to getting to know you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's Titans GM Mike Borgonzi here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Lucas, you back there?
I am.
All right. You got questions?
Yeah, I mean, interesting conversation. So much of the discussion beforehand in terms of his introductory press conference, conversations he had with media members at the Senior Bowl, it felt like so much of it pointed towards the idea of trading back and the benefits of trading back and, not reaching for need over overall talent at a place like number one overall. And now we're seeing, both sides of the coin, where it's, if there's a player that we feel can help us at number one overall, we're going to draft that player. If we find an opportunity where we can trade back and acquire a ton of picks, we're going to do that as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, they're just in such an